Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we talk with John Silvani, president and CEO of Gravity Software. John's a veteran of the Microsoft channel. Before founding Gravity, he ran and sold another Dynamics of our business. John also wrote an article for us in 2018. It was on our best of list, and it described his experiences running a cloud financial solutions ISV whose product has been built first on Dynamics CRM Online and now on the Common Data Service and the Power Platform. We talk about the evolution of Gravity's partnership with Microsoft, his thoughts on the evolution of CDS and the Power Platform itself, and ask for his advice for other businesses looking to use Microsoft's business solution ecosystem as their platform of choice. All right, John Silvani, thank you for joining me today.
Jason, thank you. Appreciate you taking the time with me.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anyone in our audience, so some of the people in our audience probably know who you are. You've written for us. You've been present and presented on a webcast or two for us as well. But for anyone just catching up and hearing about you for the first time, being introduced to you here on the podcast, maybe you could tell us a little more about who you are and what Gravity Software is.
Absolutely. I was actually owned a Microsoft VAR for about 15 years. We sold most of the Microsoft Dynamics products, and especially the CRM, what was CRM at the time, now Dynamics 365 CE. And we sold that practice about 5 years ago. So very familiar with Dynamics GP, Dynamics AX, and the iterations of those products. After selling that and living on the reseller community, I decided to kind of enter the foray of building an accounting product, and that's where Gravity was born about 4 years ago, to be able to be a middle market accounting product that fit in a spot between the entry-level products, which is usually QuickBooks and Xero, and the more sophisticated products, like which is now Business Central and above. So Gravity was built, and we decided at that time to build it on the Microsoft, again, CRM platform is what it was called when we started, which is now developed into a full-fledged development application.
Interesting, yeah. So you've been really on, and that was, it used to be referred to as XRM, right? And you were,
yes,
you might have been considered, Gravity Software might have been considered a pure XRM type of product at that when it started out.
Absolutely, yeah. It's Microsoft's obviously gone through some name and some kind of, I think, finding how to deploy this as a platform versus as a product.
And that's very much still in transition to some extent. Well, let's see. I mean, so it's in transition, but there's also, I guess, some assurance from the company too that this is the direction that they're going with, sort of productizing the XRM, the elements that made up XRM, and maybe sort of modernizing certain parts of that too, with the Power Platform, right? And that's a lot of what I wanted to kind of learn from you today. Would you agree with that assessment? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, initially, while Microsoft had always been promoting XRM as a platform, they really hadn't formalized it well. And, because of the way it was architected in prior to the version 9 that's available today, you kind of had to always have these CRM components around whether you wanted them or not, or licensed them or not. So it was kind of confusing to people to say, yeah, this is our platform, but oh, by the way, there's all these applications you can't use on here unless you pay for them. So today, Microsoft has really legitimized the platform side of it by their new architecture, where the CRM components are separate. They've obviously identified PowerApps as the core development environment, which is a no-code, low-code environment. So it really now today is now a true legitimate platform for development.
And for your product, were you really focused on kind of stripping away, or has it made it easier for you to perhaps strip away the parts, the components that you weren't using or didn't want to use, and really just focus on your own application development? Or was the CRM side of it useful to you throughout?
Well, yeah, we made a design decision very early on when we designed Gravity to build it with 100% custom entities, kind of with the idea that we hoped that Microsoft would go down this path that it has. And in doing that, it makes it very easy to transition from the old version 8 platform to the new version 9 platform, basically known as CDS today. So we didn't have a lot of things that had to change, but we did have integration into the existing CRM components for people who had accounts and contacts and did operations on that side. We're even integrated into the project services. So we have a little bit of work what we've done to isolate that into a separate solution, so we can now install on the CDS platform by itself and on the standard Dynamics platform with CRM components and add an integration solution.
Okay. So that's a level of flexibility that's there today then? Either of those approaches is possible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, again, we were lucky enough that we saw a lot of other applications use accounts and contacts as their core, and we decided not to. And one of the main reasons for that, and including the orders and invoices and such, was because there were other applications that were built on the Dynamics platform that already use those, like a time and billing application. And we realized that if we're going to work with that time and billing application, and they use the invoicing entity, and we're going to use the invoicing entity, our customizations are going to conflict. So we decided to separate out into, again, all 100% custom entities, so we wouldn't conflict with any other application, and it's really worked well for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense now. Especially, I mean, it certainly, you can see your decision, why you made that decision early on, and it certainly does make sense now as well. As Microsoft has gone through this transition, what's your experience been like? I mean, they've made some very big decisions that were impactful to you and your company, impactful to other partners who maybe took your approach or took a different approach, who had sort of embraced XRM previously. What's the transition been like over the last 18 months?
The transition from a technology standpoint has been fairly straightforward, but the hard part for us, and I think for most of the reseller channel, or the VAR channel, I should say, actually I should relabel it the ISV channel, is the licensing. Microsoft's licensing has changed in the past 18 months, and it's not always very clear as to what license applies in which situation. We know obviously very simple that a sales license applies to a salesperson, but when you get into an ISV type application, there are now basically certain rules, and that's changed. And so that one thing we have to basically encompass into about our users, because about half of our users do not have any of the CRM components and the other half do. So the half that does already have sales licenses and they're all set, but those that don't, we have to incorporate like a PowerApps license or similar into our licensing cost to be able to be compliant. And again, keeping compliant with Microsoft's rules has been a little bit of a challenge there.
Yeah, I would think from what I've read about the changes that they have made to licensing, that you would fit a product like yours would fit into that PowerApps license segment using custom entities in CDS.
Yeah, that's what we feel from studying the licensing and talking to Microsoft, that it's called the PowerApps 2 license has been probably the perfect license for a non-sales or non-marketing user to use for just financial accounting.
Okay.
Yeah, until Microsoft changes it again next year, so then we'll figure that out.
And in terms of what you've sort of perceived from Microsoft themselves, have they been more encouraging of people embracing that PowerApps version or Model 2 license approach?
Well, I think it still has some fine tuning to do. We've talked to them, different people with Microsoft, but of course, Microsoft being kind of as large as it is, it's difficult sometimes to find the right people to express concerns. The biggest challenge today for us is to bringing out certain applications. Like if we wanted to bring out a timekeeper, time and billing system with a timekeeper license, the cost of adding our license on top of the $40 PowerApps P2 license would make a timekeeper prohibitive. So again, we have to work with Microsoft to figure out how do we stay within their licensing requirements, but still be able to deliver a product that is sellable and licensable at a cost that the people will use.
So yeah, I mean, licensing was certainly something that I was curious about, and it really seems like it's evolving across the Dynamics 365, or I guess the whole business application space. Since Power Apps has become, you know, a focus, and it seems like, I mean, I don't know, you've been in this space longer than I have, but it seems like sometimes when it comes to licensing, different people are making decisions on different elements of the license offerings, and that one of the risks seems to be that they can get out of sync, or that their different licenses perhaps don't align with each other perfectly.
Yeah, I agree with that. And at the same time, I think some of the documentation Microsoft has is conflicting. You'll see certain places where one license type seems to be the correct one, and then you'll read something else where a different license type, looks like it's more appropriate. So, and I think that again is the fact that we're in a new kind of area right now with the Dynamics PowerApps platform, Power Platform, and as Microsoft, I think, starts to feel how to basically solidify this licensing better, it may become clearer. But it's still a little bit fuzzy right now.
Okay. I mean, the other part that I thought Microsoft was enthusiastic about, and it might be the case that certain parts of Microsoft are, and maybe other parts just aren't yet, is the idea of getting people, just encouraging companies to build on the Power Platform and give Microsoft something that they can put in app source or just point to as, platform driven app development and ISV opportunities in the cloud, in the Microsoft cloud, just sort of on a broader scale, showing that that it can be done both as just a development partner, but also as a business sort of business applications partner. Any other experience around whether or not that is something that Microsoft's actually sort of working with you on, or kind of trying to encourage other companies to dive into?
Well, we're in an interesting situation in many aspects with Microsoft. Some would say that we compete with Microsoft in that we're a full ERP accounting application, which Business Central is, and our price points aren't that much different. We do have different features and functions than Business Central has, but so on one hand we compete with them, like most of the Microsoft ecosystem. You compete with them and you also cooperate with them, or you partner with them. So on one hand, we partner with them because we are on their platforms, promoting their tools, promoting Power BI and such. At the other side, they can see us as, in some places, competing. So we do kind of end up in a little bit of a unique situation. And also, our audience generally wouldn't go to the app source to find a full accounting application. Usually the app source, most of the resellers in there are selling either a operational piece or a utility piece of software. I have Dynamics Platform and I'm looking for something that can do this. Rarely we get any leads that basically say I'm running Dynamics Platform, I'm looking for a whole accounting system. So our lead sources generally come from outside of the Microsoft world.
So perhaps people who know they need a new accounting solution, or a new ERP type of solution, and they're looking for that type of more foundational system to install and deploy to their company.
Exactly. And one of the interesting things, and this is what we try to work with Microsoft on, is at least half or more of our users are not Microsoft people. They basically are running a QuickBooks platform, a Gmail platform, something like that, and we're bringing them into the Microsoft world. Mm-hmm. And because we're on the Dynamics platform, we're also introducing them to a lot of tools like Power BI. And that eventually starts to spill over into, hey, why not incorporate Office 365 into this? Why not incorporate other Microsoft tools and have one unified platform? So we are driving a fairly large audience of people from outside of the Microsoft community into the Microsoft community.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I definitely want to get back to that in just a second, but something else you said kind of caught my attention, and that was sort of the difference between what you offer versus, say, what a Business Central offers. And the first thing I think of, having seen some shorter demos of Gravity's solution, is a focus on more specific, and it seems like maybe it's built for more specific, verticals or even micro verticals, to address kind of more specific business needs of those types of companies.
Exactly. So, again, we're not really feel that we want to be head on head with Microsoft. We don't feel we are. We feel that we serve markets that aren't served well by, again, a Business Central. One of our key markets are what we would call multi-entity companies, restaurant franchises, real estate investment organizations, people that have multiple legal entities and need to have lots of cross-entity transactions, consolidations, reporting. Most accounting systems, either at the low end or including Business Central, really treat each entity as a separate database, as a separate, and have very limited, if any, intercompany activity capability. So we opened that whole thing up quite a bit. We've been able to take the one Dynamics 365 database and basically treat that as a multi-tenant, and each entity being a tenant in that database.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and the flexibility that affords. And going back to your point about sort of being able to talk about and sort of bring companies into the larger sort of Microsoft business or enterprise environment as part of the proposition that you bring as a Microsoft partner. Maybe we could step through a few of those areas. So, I mean, the one that I maybe thought of first was the ability, and you can tell me if this is right or not, but was to have with a PowerApps license, you have not just sort of your solution, but also, I guess, the ability to encourage the development of other apps via PowerApps and the common data service, and giving companies essentially that platform in addition to your specific solution that they're getting. Is that a selling point, or is that even right?
No, that's absolutely correct. We encourage the use of tools like Microsoft Flow. We encourage the use of, as I mentioned earlier, Power BI as tools, not just for Gravity, but for, unifying other systems in. We have a large financial company right now that is building a operations platform for CPAs and other financial or related companies, and we're encouraging them to now use Microsoft Flow to integrate in with us, and that's really going to be their primary accounting system they work with, and it would be very difficult to do without some of these platform tools that Microsoft has. And again, bringing them into the fold, Microsoft has built a platform that really is now extremely rich in tools and capabilities that make it easy for us to kind of promote and bring people in.
Mm-hmm. What about the Microsoft's own portal solution? Does that enter into your own work at all?
So that is in our roadmap. There's been a lot of requests for starting with a customer portal. Obviously we do things like invoices, and being able to have a portal where a customer could come in and see all their invoices and pay their invoices and stuff. So in our roadmap is the ability to bring in that portal solution. Microsoft has been enhancing the portal with each release, so we think we're almost at a point where their technology now allows us to basically deploy that. So we hope in the next quarter to have that customer portal in place.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. I mean, I followed the portal solution since back before when it was ADX Studio, and
yep.
It started as such a pure XRM solution, and it seems like it sort of swung after Microsoft acquired it. It became more rigid for a while, and now maybe it's going back to that range on the spectrum where it becomes very friendly to other sort of PowerApps based or CDS based solutions once again, or it should be getting there. That's it's been on my mind more recently, just in that for that reason, because it seems like it has so much promise for any kind of application like the sort of solution you guys are bringing to market.
I would agree, and again, I think Microsoft. There's always that, and we face it in our small scale of how fast do you push something out, or how long do you wait and keep adding features till it gets to where you want it to be? And that's a balancing act. You obviously want to bring product out that people can use right away. At the same time, you don't want it to be either so weak in features, or you don't want to hold it back for too long, because then you'll never be able to realize the revenue from it and so on. So there's a balancing act there, and I think Microsoft obviously has done that well over the years. And so they finally, I think, got the portal to a point where it has the feature set that, as you mentioned, I think would be great for ISVs to use.
All right. I mean, so, and you've been obviously in the Microsoft channel for a long time. Do you ever get inquiries from other business people who are exploring investing more in the Microsoft channel, or maybe even investing more in seeing the most recent updates to the business application space at Microsoft, and wondering if they should get involved, and if so, what do you tell them?
Well, it's interesting. So there's a community being built right now of our own ISVs on top of Gravity. So, and again, most of these have not come from the Microsoft channel already. They see Gravity as an accounting solution. They want to build a very vertical, like a construction application, or we have a title insurance application that's being built upon our product. So they're coming in, learning the tools and so on. But to take it even a step back, when just talking about the platform in general, we could not build, as a small company or even a medium company, the platform that Microsoft delivers in the Dynamics 365 platform or CDS platform. I mean, the richness of tools, the richness of services that we can use and the ability to launch something fairly quickly, is almost unbelievable at some point, because it is a great product. There are obviously limitations. There are obviously lots of workarounds that, anytime you're in an environment like that, you have to live within constraints. So we've learned to do that fairly well. But I think that, anybody getting into development, I would seriously today look at developing on a platform like Dynamics or like Dynamics. There are not many others out there, but because it'll save you a tremendous amount of cost and effort.
Yeah, and I'm looking back at the article you wrote for us in 2018, and you identified a couple in particular. User interface constraints, for example. Is that something that does continue to be a changing situation for you? Has it been over the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that when you're on a platform like that and the platform changes. So right now we're in the middle of the new unified interface coming out. So that obviously we can't ignore that. If we want to continue to be on the platform, we have to endorse that. So we have to spend a fair amount of resources making sure that our product will run properly in that interface. And sometimes it's just the way we laid out. Screens don't flow well, or sometimes it's the code that needs to be changed a little bit. But so, and that's kind of not something that we chose to do directly. We will benefit by it in the long run, but we have to live within constraints of a 2-minute execution limit for a plugin, and be able to work around that, or a 50,000 record fetch aggregation limit. Accounting systems have lots of records, so again, we've learned to work around those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, is there like a creative or an alternative approach? The 50,000 record one sounds like one where you do need to get maybe a little creative with your data management.
You need to have a good development team that can recognize and figure out how to work around those limits. For example, we do a lot of financial reporting, of course, and it's not unusual for us to have to aggregate hundreds of thousands of records into a report. We've learned to work around that limit and work around it fairly efficiently, but it takes extra effort. So, again, the benefits we get on one side, sometimes there are limitations on the other. But overall, we've benefited from having a platform like Dynamics versus, the limitations that we've had to figure out.
Looking ahead into 2019, what else are you going to be watching carefully from Microsoft in particular about what actions they take and what they prioritize?
Well, the whole world, in some sense, is moving towards AI, and Microsoft obviously is introducing AI as part of the platform for sales and customer service. We're watching what they're going to be doing with that and seeing how it actually can be incorporated into an accounting application. One of the things that I think we're trying to get in accounting and applications in general is get away from, as much as possible, of data entry. Why do we have to create an invoice, send it to somebody in the mail, they have to rekey punch it in, so all this data entry that doesn't really add value to the whole business. It just has to happen to make sure that we get the transactions processed. If we can use AI and OCR and AI and other aspects to be able to automate that process of data entry, people can spend more time on their business instead of in their business.
Sure. And maybe I'd kind of pose the same question, not in terms of what you're going to be kind of watching for Microsoft, but are you going to be watching for other things from maybe the partner channel in general in the coming year, preferences, trends there, or perhaps from the buyer community, the potential the companies that are potential buyers of your solution? Are there things that you're looking for in terms of change?
What we found is the buyer community is continually getting more sophisticated. With each year that goes on, they know more. They're looking for more and better solutions, and at the same time, everybody expects a solution to be like an app on your phone where you just install it and you're going to use it right away. So, we're trying to build more sophisticated applications for the buyers, but we're trying to make them simpler to implement and use. So that's kind of one of our mantras going forward. We at Gravity are also trying to develop a reseller channel, and that is hopefully is a part of the Microsoft channel, and we think we can coexist because our audience is, again, different than Business Central. So we believe we can coexist in the reseller channel with Business Central, and that a reseller can sell the Gravity application, which is still selling Microsoft at its core and all the Microsoft tools, and sell Business Central where appropriate, and in the end have their customers be extremely happy.
That's an interesting point, and it's one that I've heard mirrored on the Business Central side. Well, especially this point about sort of expectations, whether it's the customer or the partner, about what a deployment really is going to look like in the future. I guess in the sense that customers expect that the days of the super expensive upfront installation process are quickly disappearing, and what they're going to be paying for instead is ongoing services, ongoing subscription costs instead. And then I guess on the other side, partners trying to come to grips with that reality.
Yeah, we have a good handful of partners who have adopted kind of a different model than what our standard, traditional model would be. To sell when I was in VAR, we'd sell a big piece of software like GP. We sell a big contract up front of services, and then of course we had upgrades every year that we would sell, and so on. Today, it seems like the VARs are trying to move their services into the same subscription model. So in essence, what we do is they basically purchase the product from us on behalf of their customer, incorporate their services into a monthly bill, and then we'll bill every month for a consolidated set of services that includes the Gravity application, their consulting services, maybe even some bookkeeping services or something like that. So I think we're going across the board into a software and service as a service model versus a big upfront implementation of software and then a little bit of services after that.
Yeah, interesting, and I think that's certainly going to be one of the things I'm going to keep watching for personally as we kind of roll deeper into 2019 here. Well, John, this has been fun. Thank you so much for taking the time. I definitely look forward to seeing how things move ahead for you and for Gravity Software this year.
Jason, I appreciate it. And anybody who has wants any more information about Gravity, our website is go-gravity.com.
John, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you again, Jason.
This has been another episode of the MSDW Podcast. My thanks to John Silvani of Gravity Software for joining me today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email is jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.